The role of visual short-term memory and amodal completion. Introduction to amodal completion and visual working memory. I'm Horwi and I hope you enjoy. Amodal completion refers to perceptual phenomenon where the brain fills in missing parts of an occluded object, making it appear as a whole despite being partially hidden. For instance, when we see a cat peeking from behind a curtain, we still perceive the entire cat as being present behind obstruction. This process is fundamental to how we navigate visual environments, allowing us to perceive complete objects in complex scenes. In this lecture, we will explore how higher level cognitive processes, such as visual short-term memory, VSTM, plays a crucial role in influencing amodal completion. Does holding information VSTM impact our ability to perceptually complete occluded objects? This question lies at the heart of the study conducted by Hyun-Kyu Lee and Sean Versera. What is visual short-term memory, VSTM? VSTM is the cognitive system responsible for temporarily holding and manipulating visual information. It allows us to retain detail about objects and scenes for brief periods, enabling us to interact with the environment efficiently. Previous research has suggested that amodal completion is typically automatic and stimulus-driven, but this study questions whether higher-level cognitive processes, such as those involved in VSTM, can influence this perceptual filling-in process. Research question. The central question addressed by the study is, can the load on VSTM influence the process of amodal completion? In other words, if we are holding items in our VSTM, such as color patches, does it interfere with our ability to complete an occluded object? This research sought to determine whether amodal completion is purely bottom-up, stimulus-driven process, or if higher cognitive functions can affect it. Experimental design. 3 experiments were conducted to investigate the relationship between VSTM and amodal completion. Experiment 1, procedure. Participants viewed 4 rectangles on a screen, which were then partially occluded by a gray block. Before the occlusion, color patches appeared at the ends of the rectangles, and participants were asked to either remember these colors, load condition, or ignore them, no load condition, tasks. Participants performed an object-based attention set, responding to cues on one end of a rectangle, followed by target distractors. The response times RTs and the degree of amodal completion were measured. Experiment 2. Purpose. To test whether the effects found in Experiment 1 were due to the VTSM influencing object-based attention rather than amodal completion itself. The procedure. The same experiment as before, but with 2 large connected rectangles instead of 4 separate ones, ensuring that the memory load will not affect object-based attention in the same way. And the third experiment, purpose, to rule out the possibility that the location of the color patches influenced attention. Procedure. The color patches were moved from the outermost edges of the rectangles, testing whether a broader distribution of attention across the display could prevent VSTM from disrupting amodal completion. Key findings. Experiment 1. VSTM interferes with amodal completion. If the no-load condition, when participants were not holding any information in VSTM, participants demonstrated typical amodal completion. Their response times were faster for targets in the same object, occluded rectangle, than for targets in different objects. In the load cognition, where participants were holding color patches of VSTM, amodal completion was disrupted. There was no significant difference in response time for same object versus different object targets, indicating that holding objects in VSTM blocked the ability to complete the occluded rectangles. Experiment 2. VSTM affects completion, not attention. Results showed that VSTM influenced amodal completion but not object-based attention. Even when the task involved 2 connected rectangles, which were easier to track with attention, VSTM still disrupted amodal completion. Experiment 3. Location of color patches does not influence results. The disruption of amodal completion was not due to attentional biases toward the color patch locations. When color patches were moved to the ends of rectangles, the effect of VSTM on completion persisted, ruling out attentional disruption as a factor. Conclusion: high-level cognitive processes affect amodal completion. Amodal completion is not purely stimulus-driven. The study shows that VSTM can influence the process of completing occluded objects. When the brain is busy holding items in VSTM, it is less able to fill in the missing parts of occluded objects. VSTM plays a dual role. While VSTM helps us retain details about objects, it also consumes cognitive resources that can interfere with perceptual processes like amodal completion. The interaction between memory and perceptions. This study highlights the dynamic interaction between memory and perception, where ongoing cognitive tasks, such as remembering colors, can influence fundamental perceptual processes. Implications for visual cognition. This research has important implications for how we understand visual processing. Amodal completion is flexible. The ability to complete occluded objects is not fixed. It can be modulated by cognitive load, particularly in VSTM. Cognitive limitations. The brain's capacity to handle multiple tasks, for example, holding objects in memory while completing an object, is limited, which affects our efficiency, how efficiently we process visual information clustered or occluded scenes. Applications. This research could be applied in fields such as design, where understanding how visual memory influences perception can help create more efficient interfaces or environments for visual tasks. Key takeaways for students. Amodal completion is influenced by VSTM. The brain's ability to complete partially hidden objects can be disrupted by a high memory load. 2. Perception and memory are intertwined. Visual cognition is not just about what we see, it also depends on what we are holding in memory. 3. Cognitive load matters. When our cognitive resources are occupied, even basic perceptual processes, such as filling in occluded objects, can break down. This concludes our lecture on the relationship between visual short-term memory and amodal completion, illustrating the intricate balance between perception and memory in visual cognition.